The world may be preoccupied with open warfare, but Iran is doing something far more extreme behind the scenes. With little fanfare, hundreds of people have been arrested and executed on suspicion of acting as agents for the Mossad and the United States. These aren't just empty accusations. Iran has begun presenting evidence from advanced communication devices to recordings of covert operations. This is no longer about who has the most missiles, but about who's the best at infiltration. Is this spy network truly crippled, or is this just a diversionary tactic amid a crisis? Watch the full expose in this video, because what's happening behind the scenes is far more terrifying than what you see in the news. Deadly covert operation. It all began on March 18, 2026. In the heat of the war, Iran announced the execution of Karash Kivani, a man accused of being a Mossad spy during the 12th Day War in June 2025. Kivani was said to have supplied images and intelligence regarding sensitive Iranian sites data that was crucial in determining attack targets. The timing of his execution was no coincidence. The announcement coincided with the death of Iran's intelligence minister, Ismail Khatib, in an airstrike in Tehran. Iran's aim in executing Kivani, amid an active conflict, was to create a far greater psychological impact, sending a strong signal to anyone considering collaborating with the enemy. And as it turns out, this was merely the beginning of a much broader operation. Before the execution took place, a massive sweep had already been conducted in secret. Iranian police chief Ahmad Reza Radan announced that security forces had arrested approximately 500 people suspected of spying for Israel. This figure is not merely a statistic. Of that number, about 250 are said to hold key positions with strategic access, enabling them to provide sensitive information regarding domestic targets, ranging from military facilities to vital infrastructure. That's not all. At least 50 others were arrested on charges of being mercenaries, individuals who collaborated with the United States and Israel to identify strategic locations, including public services and infrastructure networks. The agents' confessions began to lift the veil on this operation. One suspect admitted to recording the locations targeted for attacks to ensure accuracy. Even if a strike missed, he reportedly requested that the target be struck again, indicating direct coordination on the ground. Another case is even more shocking. A female agent was arrested after recording the moment a bomb fell in a civilian area, then sending this video to a contact suspected of being linked to Mossad. In this recording, she even expressed support for the United States and Israel. And within just about 30 minutes after the video was sent, her location was successfully tracked down by authorities. She was immediately apprehended, demonstrating just how swift Iran's counterintelligence response is. Meanwhile, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, through its intelligence unit, also announced the arrest of 103 individuals suspected of being part of an American-Israeli network since the start of the war. One of the most serious cases involved a four-member cell planning to sabotage Tehran's power grid. However, this plan was successfully thwarted before it could be carried out. To prevent this network from expanding further, the Iranian government has drastically tightened its control over information. Internet access has been restricted, and some communication channels have even been cut off. In a follow-up operation in early April, authorities seized 139 Starlink terminals and arrested 46 people suspected of being involved in their distribution. These devices are believed to have been used for covert communications that are difficult to track. It didn't stop there. The Iranian Ministry of Intelligence also thwarted the smuggling of small and medium-caliber weapons allegedly intended for use by opposition-affiliated armed groups to carry out sabotage and security disruptions. All of this points to one thing. This war is not only taking place in the air or at sea, but also within the country, behind the scenes, in the shadows. And if it is true that a network of this magnitude has been successfully dismantled, then one big question arises. How much remains undiscovered? The War of Wild Narratives. As the conflict escalates, the war is no longer confined to the battlefield. It has shifted to the information sphere. Emerging narratives point to the emergence of a network of Iranian pseudo-patriots, diaspora figures perceived as advocating U.S. interests, who frame their support as pressure or even attacks against Iran. One of the most frequently highlighted names is Masih al-Anagid. She is said to have a wide reach and connections to the U.S. Agency for Global Media and the National Endowment for Democracy. Together with other figures such as Nazanin Boniadi and Azar Nafisi, they form an ecosystem comprising media outlets, academics, and activists actively shaping global opinion. But the conflict didn't stop there. On social media and in the streets, changes to the Iranian flag's design sparked controversy. The use of symbols deemed unofficial was accused of being part of propaganda, merely a technical error, but an effort to shape perceptions and undermine the legitimacy of the nation's identity. Iran did not sit idly by. A hacker group calling itself Handala emerged and immediately struck back. Their first target was Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. His personal email was hacked, and a number of documents and personal images were leaked to the public. At this point, one thing is clear. This war is not just about bullets and missiles, but also about information. And whoever controls the narrative can shift the course of the conflict without firing a single shot. The threshold of a new war. The accumulation of mutual intelligence operations and psychological warfare, coupled with the failure of peace talks in Islamabad, has become a turning point, propelling the conflict into a new phase. Instead of subsiding, tensions have escalated. And now, the signs are increasingly clear. Preparations for an ongoing confrontation between the United States, Israel, and Iran. On the military front, the most tangible signal comes from the movement of the United States Air Force to the Middle East. Dozens of strategic transport aircraft, such as the C-17 Globemaster III and C-130J Super Hercules, have been detected heading toward the region. They are not empty. They are carrying large numbers of troops, defense systems, and combat logistics. This is not just a routine troop rotation, it is a familiar pattern. In previous escalations, troop surges like this have almost always signaled that something bigger is being prepared, that diplomatic pressure has begun to give way to full combat readiness. On the other hand, Iran is showing no signs of backing down. Defense systems are being reinforced, surveillance is being tightened, and firm messages continue to be sent to the adversary. Everything is in motion. Everyone is preparing. And at this point, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The region is no longer in a phase of limited conflict, but on the brink of a new clash that could escalate into open war at any moment. Hormuz heats up dramatically. And now, the world's attention is focused on the most critical point, the Strait of Hormuz. Tensions in this vital global energy corridor have entered a new phase. It involves not only Iran and the United States, but also China as a key player. During the ceasefire negotiations, China was said to be standing by Iran's side, and the results were immediately visible on the ground. A Chinese tanker, the Rich Starry, reportedly managed to cross the strait. Despite the blockade announced by Donald Trump, the ship had turned back the day before, but then continued its journey. The signal is clear. The blockade is not entirely effective, and China has room to maneuver. Now, traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is beginning to be dominated by ships linked to China. This gives Beijing a strategic position, not just as an observer, but also as an active player in the crisis. On the one hand, China has the ability to pressure Iran through control of satellite intelligence data. But, on the other hand, if its interests are threatened, China could also become a source of support in the form of targeting intelligence against U.S. Navy ships. This means the balance of power in Hormuz is now far more complex. The impact is felt immediately around the world. Energy prices are soaring, even before the full effects of the blockade have truly set in. Interestingly, Iran is actually expected to be better able to withstand the pressure thanks to its domestic capacity and supply resilience. Meanwhile, other Gulf states are beginning to feel greater pressure. And in the midst of all this, the Middle East is at its most fragile point, caught between uncertain diplomacy and an increasingly real potential for destruction.